Good evening, I'm Farhana Sheikh. Here are the top stories for tonight. Hamas says top leaders survive Israel's attack in Qatar. And Nepal extends curfew after deadly protests rock capital. That and more coming up on AWANI International. We're following the fallout from Israel's strike in Doha, Qatar, a strike targeting Hamas political leaders that has drawn widespread global condemnation. According to Hamas, 5 of its members were killed in the attack, among them the son of senior exiled leader Khalil al-Hayya. The group, though, says its top leadership survived. Qatar called the strike a blatant breach of international law and a serious threat to people in the country. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu defended the move, saying it was fully justified. He says it targeted those behind the October 7th assault on Israel. US President Donald Trump, meanwhile, distanced himself. He said the decision was Netanyahu's alone and warned that a unilateral strike on Qatar does not advance Israel or America's goals. Trump claims he told his envoy Steve Witkoff to alert Qatar ahead of the attack. But Qatari officials deny that, saying the call from the US came once explosions were already underway in Doha. Meanwhile, Arab leaders from the UAE, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia are expected to arrive in Qatar as a show of regional solidarity following the strikes. World leaders are condemning Israel's strike on Hamas leaders in Doha, calling it a blatant violation of Qatar's sovereignty and international law. Germany, Canada, Turkey, the European Union, Britain, and Japan all issued statements warning that the attack could spark dangerous escalation in the region.
German Chancellor Friedrich Merz said the strike was unacceptable and jeopardized efforts to free hostages. Meanwhile, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney called it an intolerable expansion of violence that violated peace efforts and Qatari sovereignty. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan assured Qatar's Emir Sheikh Tamim Hamad Al Thani of Ankara's full support, describing the assault as state terrorism that threatened Qatar's peace and security. The European Union also condemned the strike, reaffirmed full solidarity with Doha, and support for ceasefire diplomacy. In London, Prime Minister Keir Starmer condemned the attack and urged an immediate ceasefire, the release of hostages, and greater aid access into Gaza. Japan joined the chorus of criticism, with Tokyo calling the strike a threat to regional security and urged Israel to return to diplomacy.
Now on to the unrest in Nepal. The army says curfew orders will remain in place through Thursday after days of violent protests in Kathmandu. No protests were reported in the capital, but the aftermath of Tuesday's violence was still visible. Armed soldiers were seen patrolling deserted streets amid the curfew. Earlier, Army Chief Ashok Raj Sigdal urged dialogue with the protesters. The worst upheaval in decades began after the government banned 26 social media sites, a decision later revoked. At least 25 people were killed and more than 600 injured after clashes with authorities, fueling a full-scale anti-government protest. Several government buildings, including the Supreme Court and the Parliament, as well as ministers' homes and the former Prime Minister's private residence, were set ablaze in the protests. The pressure eventually forced Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli to resign, plunging Nepal into a fresh political crisis. That's our top news. Stay tuned for more after the break.
Daulat Torgu.
Welcome back. Thailand is on its third prime minister in just 2 years, with Tycoon Anutin Chanvirakul sworn in over the weekend. As he moves to form his cabinet, Dr. Pongpisut Busbarat, also known as Paul, from Thailand's Institute of Security and International Studies, shares his thoughts on Anutin's priorities ahead of yet another national election.
Officially, he will focus on a couple of issues in his government. First, stimulating economic well-being. Of course, like just like within 4 months, if he, want to stay with this period, he will want to show, how his government is effective and probably better for his, party in the next election. So he has to focus on stimulating economic growth and security issues, especially in terms of how to revive the Thai-Cambodian relationship, during his 4 months time. And the third one that he announced was about the natural disaster, because during this time, as you may aware, is the monsoon season in Thailand. So normally we got this flooding problem, in many parts of the country. So probably he has to act very actively in this area. And the fourth one that he officially announced was about social issue, drug smuggling, human trafficking, online gambling, those kind of things. But in reality, besides these official policy that he announced, as a minority government, he will have to try to maintain the stability of the government, right? As the government get pressure from the opposition party to push forward for the amendment of constitutions and, of course, to dissolve the parliament within 4 months. On the one hand, he will have to wrap things up within 4 months. Have to do it quick. On the other hand, if you have to look into the political game, right, he will have to make sure that his party will have greater opportunities to get more vote in the next elections to come.
With elections expected in the first quarter of next year, questions remain over whether voter fatigue is setting in across Thailand. But Paul believes turnout will stay above 70%, as many see this as an opportunity to reward or punish parties in the current political climate.
So I think the Thai voters are still active. They are not, of course, they kind of get tired of this political game, but I think they still want to express their voice and opinion through casting a vote, right? Especially in this kind of special situations, there are a lot of people get disappointed, on certain parties. I think they want to punish or reward certain parties that they think they could do by casting their vote. So I think it will remain that 70% up.
Paul added that the next election could see a more scattered vote as support shifts away from certain parties.
There are a big portions of the People's Parties, who supported this party before, has been disappointed with the party decision to support Anutin. I think this portion of people and voters will probably express, their anger and disappointment against People's Party, and we could see. I'm not sure, but we could see their vote might be decreased, by these conditions, and I think Pheu Thai Party might lose some of their vote as well in that sense, because the mismanagement of the Thai-Cambodia conflict, the de facto priority of this government is to get more vote. Anutin has been known for his political uh, gambling and his maneuvering. So I think in the end, some of the vote might be diverted to his parties and his allies.
The European Commission has proposed sanctions on extremist Israeli ministers and partially suspending the EU-Israel Association Agreement targeting trade-related matters. In her State of the Union speech, Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says Europe must do more, noting many member states have acted independently to push Israel to end its atrocities in Gaza.
She denounced the man-made famine in Gaza and said Israel's action is a clear attempt to undermine the two-state solution. Von der Leyen added that bilateral support will also be put on hold without affecting cooperation with Israeli civil society and Yad Vashem, Israel's Holocaust memorial. A Palestine donor group will also be launched next month, including a Gaza reconstruction fund. The Commission had previously proposed curbing Israeli access to its research funding program, but insufficient support from member states is still a barrier.
French President Emmanuel Macron has named close ally Sébastien Lecornu as the new prime minister, 24 hours after a vote of confidence ousted François Bayrou as head of government. Lecornu becomes Macron's fifth prime minister in less than 2 years, taking over at a time of mounting political and economic challenges.
The 39-year-old was among the favourites to take over. For the past 3 years, he served as France's armed forces minister, focusing on the country's response to Russia's war in Ukraine. The appointment signals Macron's determination to continue governing with a minority government and to protect his reform agenda, which includes tax cuts and a higher retirement age. In an unusual move, Macron had instructed Lecornu to consult all political parties to find compromises on the budget and other policies before forming his cabinet. That budget will be Lecornu's first major test, with France's deficit remaining nearly double the EU's 3% ceiling. Pushing through the budget was what brought down Bayrou.
US President Donald Trump says negotiations with India on trade barriers are continuing, signaling a potential deal after weeks of diplomatic friction. He adds that he plans to speak with Prime Minister Narendra Modi in the coming weeks and expresses optimism that a trade deal could be finalized.
Modi struck a note of optimism, calling the United States and India close friends and natural partners. He said both governments are working to conclude negotiations quickly and looks forward to speaking with Trump. The optimism follows months of strained talks. Last week, Trump revealed India had offered to cut tariffs on U.S. goods to zero, but he said the offer came too late. Trump had promised for months that a deal was close, yet earlier he doubled down on tariffs on Indian imports to 50% over Russian oil purchases. Meanwhile, India's chief economic advisor warned that the tariffs would reduce GDP growth by half a percentage point.
US President Donald Trump calls on the European Union to hit China and India with tariffs of up to 100%. This move is part of a strategy aimed at pressuring Russian President Vladimir Putin to end the war in Ukraine.
According to a U.S. official and an EU diplomat, Trump urged Brussels to target both countries for their continued purchases of Russian oil, which remain critical to sustaining Moscow's wartime economy. The request was made during a conference call with EU sanctions envoy David O'Sullivan and other European officials. Washington signaled it was prepared to impose similar tariffs if the EU agreed to act jointly. Such a step would mark a significant shift for the bloc, which until now has relied largely on sanctions rather than trade measures. Trump has also criticized Europe for not fully cutting its energy dependence on Russia.
Poland has shut down drones that entered its airspace during a large-scale Russian attack in western Ukraine. Prime Minister Donald Tusk, who convened an emergency cabinet meeting, said Poland is working closely with NATO, marking the first active allied response in the conflict.
Poland's military command confirmed radars tracked 19 objects in the country's airspace overnight. Authorities warned residents in the cities affected to remain at home, calling the drone strikes a real threat to public safety. Warsaw's Chopin Airport shut down for several hours before reopening, with delays expected throughout the day. Ukraine's Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha said the violations show President Vladimir Putin is expanding his war and testing the West, warning that a weak response would encourage Russia to push further into Europe. The drone strikes come as Russia and Belarus begin large-scale Zapad military drills near NATO borders, prompting Poland to close its Belarus border and Lithuania to bolster defenses.
That wraps up AWANI International. Stay with us as we track the rivalry strategies and the power shifts shaping the new global order. For more, head to international.astroawani.com and follow us on our social media accounts. I'm Farhana Sheikh. Thank you for watching and good night.